Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast, and thank you for joining me for folks' favorite Fandom Friday. Now, on these Fridays, I usually get the chance to visit with somebody from the wider world of the Tolkien fandom, writers and musicians, artists, craftsmen, scholars, content creators, and more. But I'm going to be doing something a little different for the rest of Series 7. Back at the end of July, I was invited to attend a special reception that Amazon Prime Video was holding at San Diego Comic-Con to celebrate the upcoming release of Season 2 of The Rings of Power. I had a chance to catch up with many of the cast and spend time with the showrunners, talking openly about the direction of the show. That's when I decided that for the rest of this series, I'd be spending my Fandom Fridays with other content creators who had been at SDCC and those Amazon events, in order to share their experiences, their takes with you, in case you didn't get that invite. And in order to keep those memories fresh, I'm actually talking with most of these folks shortly after Comic-Con, all of them in the first 10 days of August. That means that many of these interviews will actually release after Season 2 drops, starting on Thursday, the 29th of August. Please keep that in mind in case anybody has any predictions that end up looking totally off base in just a few weeks. Now, let's go ahead and get to today's guest. He joined me all the way back in the very first series of today's Tolkien Times. He runs the main subreddit for the Rings of Power. That's r/LOTR on Prime with the little underscores. That'll be in our show notes. He also set up the Discord server for the OneRing.net, interviewed a ton of cast members from the Rings of Power a couple of years ago, and won Dwarf of the Year for 2022. Varking, I got to ask, did you repeat in 23 as expected?
We have repeated, and hopefully in 2024 we will repeat once again, be a three-time winner.
It's the three-peat. Absolutely.
Continue to carry this momentum going forward and win Dwarf of the Year every year is the goal.
Every year. Who's the competition, really?
Owain Arthur, Peter Mullen, and Kevin Eldon, you know?
Oh,
those are the
that's
new
true.
ones.
Well, you are going to be running against some stiff competition. Folks, please welcome Varking Runesong, or simply Will Smith, to today's Tolkien Times.
Great to be back again. It was a lot of fun last time, and
absolutely, man.
Being able to share some of what we experienced and went over at SDCC is another fun opportunity I didn't want to pass up. And anytime we get to hang out, it's a good time.
Same, agreed. Well, tell me a little bit. What have you been up to in the Tolkien fandom since you last joined me? It was a little over a year ago, June of 23.
Yep. So since then, it's kind of been the same thing, just running the subreddit, talking on the Torrent Discord, trying to find scoops or any bit of news that drops around the show at all. And also, like, what people don't see, my main job in the fandom is I constantly email Amazon just crazy, outlandish ideas of different things that I think, not just myself, but that other creators can do and partake in, because I'm not the best fit for everything. And you know, you get turned down 99 times out of 100, but it's like that one time out of that 100 where it's like, oh man, so glad we were able to get that thing through, or so glad this other creator was able to get a look over something I had shared, or maybe they already had the idea on their own, but when I put it out there and then I like see something pop up, I'm taking the credit for it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, before we go on, this isn't even a question I told you I'd ask, but what was like maybe the coolest thing that you proposed that they actually said yes to?
Well, honestly, for season 1, and I don't know if they'll be upset I've shared this, but it was the idea to host fan interviews instead of just always having it be the journalists and you know, bigger websites and YouTubers and all that. I had pitched it for like a year, and they said no a bunch, or we'll get back to you a ton. And then probably like 5 or 6 months before season 1 aired, they were like, hey, if we're going to do this thing, let's get some more details about the structure around it and all that, and understand that if we do this, it's not going to be like a just you thing. And just from there, you know, other people got to do Twitter Spaces or YouTube video interviews and stuff. So that was probably the coolest thing that got approved. But there's so many way better, cooler ideas that get shut down all the time. But it's just nature of the business, I guess.
Yeah, I get a lot of that. We'll get back to you later thing as well. So I sympathize.
And I tried not to take offense, but I will ping back on that email like 3 months later and be like, hey, is it time to get back to that thing yet? Or are we not doing that?
Circling around, circling back.
Yeah.
You got to use that corporate lingo like they do.
You do. All right. You definitely do.
Well, it is time to go ahead and get into our experiences at San Diego Comic-Con. We had a great time there. I want to ask, what were your highlights from the Thursday night event and or from Hall H? And then part two of that question, what is it that you learned that has made you more excited, or in fairness, possibly less excited for the launch of season two of The Rings of Power?
So highlights for me is honestly, I say this and I'm not being like trying to give a nice answer. It's
Sure.
seeing everybody get their time to interact with in person with cast, crew, the showrunners, and you get to ask them some real legit questions
Yeah, you
and
do.
get real answers back where it's not some sort of scripted thing or it's not an
Yeah.
email you sent and they replied 3 weeks later and you're like, did they answer this?
Or it
Or
gets filtered through three PR specialists. Yeah.
exactly. You're doing it live and in real time. And
Yeah.
for a lot of it, it's just seeing the faces of the
Hmm.
people as they're interacting with these folks.
Yeah.
But like on a personal level, it was the moment I walked in on Thursday, I was one of the first people to enter and see the cast.
Hmm.
And Sophia Disa
Ah,
was in
Sophia's
front of
great.
me. And during season one, I often wore a shirt that had like a cartoon character image of Durin and Disa on it,
Uh-huh.
and she's asked me for that on Instagram a bunch.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I finally gave her that shirt in person. And then
Yay.
Silmer Emily had these
Uh-huh.
friendship bracelets made, and mine said Dwarves on it. And so
Uh-huh.
I gave that to Sophia as well.
Oh,
So
that's
it
great.
was cool
Oh,
for once to be able to like give back to them for all
yeah.
like the cool stuff that they've hooked me up with and opportunities and all that.
That is awesome. What a highlight indeed. That's good stuff. Well, what about the second part of that? What was it that you learned or heard or found out about that has made you more excited for season two? I eliminated the second half of that because let's be honest, there's probably nothing you found out that's made you less excited.
Correct. I mean, as
Yeah.
my whole shtick is as long as the dwarves are done well, I'm gonna be happy with the show. And
Yeah.
if that means other parts suffered or didn't meet the expectations of other people, whether it's the elves or Numenorians or Harfoots, if the
Yeah.
dwarves are good,
It's all about
I'm
the
good.
dwarves, man. Yeah.
But just from being able to talk with them and then actually watching footage that you
Mhm.
guys have all seen by now, the dwarves on screen still very good, but,
Yeah, they are.
when I saw still images of, like, the Anatar
Yeah.
for Charlie Vickers, I wasn't exactly 100% sold on it.
Mhm.
Seeing it more in motion and hearing all, like, the behind the scenes videos that they put together,
Yeah.
really excited for his performance about that, and then I went, like, from here to here on
Mhm.
Charles Edwards as Celebrimbor,
Yes.
the interviews, the behind the scenes stuff that they allowed him to do that they shared with us that I think have now
Mhm.
already been aired on YouTube since then.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just seems like he gets the role and he's embraced it fully and he's ready to give us an amazing performance for season two. So
I'm
super,
excited
super
about that
hyped
too.
about that.
Yeah, 100% on that. It felt like last season they didn't really utilize him very much. He felt he was on the sidelines, but man, just the couple glimpses we've seen really show his acting chops, and
For sure.
it's gonna be powerful. I think you're right.
He has a
All right.
comment that I just think is like a nice little look at the camera and wink moment.
Yeah.
Um, One of the ladies who's helping him craft the rings in the behind the scenes video is like,
Mhm.
"Well, what hand are you?" And
Oh
he's like,
yeah.
"I'm right-handed, but elves are ambidextrous." And he like looks
Right.
at the camera like knowingly. It's just like that little stuff like that. I love it, and
I do
it makes me
too.
root for him, and I want
Yeah.
to see him do great on screen. And I think
Yeah.
he's going to.
I think he will too. I just hope he actually gets to stick around a little bit into season three. I hope he's not Celebrimbor Banner quite yet.
That
But we'll
has been
find
the
out.
popular fan theory that Banner will take place in season two.
It
But
kind of
every
it probably ought to
conversation,
because you got the Siege of Eregion at the end of the show, but
and I hear that,
maybe early
but
season 3 instead.
I know somebody went up to him and had to explain to him at the party what a Banner was,
Oh, no.
which makes me feel like
Yeah,
it maybe did not happen in the show
or
yet.
maybe they kill him off in a different way, which would be kinda sad, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we'll
I mean,
find
which
out.
which kinda leads into your next question.
Yeah, that really does. I wanna talk to you about the dwarves. I mean, why would I have you on if I'm not gonna talk about the dwarves? What are your predictions for Durin the 3rd and Durin the 4th as the dwarven rings come into play? And then secondly, what are your thoughts on bringing Narvi into the show?
So I think for during the 4th,
Mhm.
obviously with all of the images we've gotten and the footage that we've seen, he's definitely going into some sort of like descent into madness. The rings are obviously affecting him.
Oh, yeah, I
And
said
it's
3rd and 4th. I meant 4th and 5th, didn't I?
no, you're right, 4th and
No,
3rd.
is it? Okay.
During the 3rd, King Durin,
Okay. Yep, yep.
he's the one that I think is going to be affected by the
Yeah,
ring.
Yeah.
He has a moment in the trailers where he like knocks back during the third, during the fourth, I mean, which is
Right.
not cool. I
No.
didn't enjoy seeing that in the trailer. I found the showrunners immediately and was like, every time y'all showed them on screen, other than like one time, it was not a
Yeah.
good time for us.
No. No.
We did see the Balrog, so I don't know if during the third and the Balrog maybe have a moment, maybe during
Maybe.
the third dies, trying to fight the
Ooh.
Balrog and keep it contained to where it's at.
Yeah.
But I do believe that by the end of this season, maybe Durin the fourth will be the only Durin in the show left. He'll
Mm.
be King Durin on his own then, and Disa
Yeah.
will now
Yeah.
be, instead of Princess Disa, she'll be Queen.
Queen Disa, as she should be.
Yeah, and then we'll have a new
Disa
prince
is a
and
queen
princess
for
for
sure.
Gerda and Gamli, which is
Yeah.
an exciting time. But I think that my hope for the season is that during the siege, that the dwarves are
Mhm.
rallied by Durin the Fourth,
Yeah.
and they show up and they look amazing on screen, and they're able to take people in and
Yep.
shut the doors, and then like we kind
Exactly.
of go from there.
That would be good. Narvi. They're bringing Narvi in.
One of my
Talk to me
favorite,
about that.
one
Yeah,
of my
such a
favorite
I mean,
dwarfs
such
of
a tiny
all.
character in the books, but such an important character.
The fact that I joke about this, and I tell everybody that clearly Narvi did all the work, and it's just Celebrimbor's blueprints. Like, he drew
The
them up, he wrote it out, but it's
elf
Narvi
took the
who's
credit.
doing the
Yeah.
work. The
Yeah.
Doors of Durin, like, one of the
Yeah.
most iconic pieces of architecture in Tolkien, period. People know them
Absolutely.
from the books, from the
Mhm.
movies. I mean, they're amazing to look at in the
They are.
movies. They have that speak friend and enter. It's like a
Mhm.
showcase of the elves and dwarves friendship at that time,
Yeah.
that they did work on this together. It is speak friend and enter, and both Narvi and Celebrimbor have their names etched on the door
Mhm.
itself to show that friendship
Right.
that they had, which I was worried we weren't going to really see this, and that maybe
Yeah.
some of Narvi's characteristics were merged into Durin and some of
Mhm.
Celebrimbor's were merged
Into
into
Elrond.
Elrond,
Yeah.
because that friendship, and I don't really know how you can show more of a bromance than what Elrond and Durin already had, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they do with Narvi and Celebrimbor.
Me too.
And as articles have shared, Narvi's going to be like the right hand man to
Yeah.
King Durin,
Mhm.
and be a political party. We'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, we will. I'm really looking forward to that as well. I think showing that friendship in multiple dimensions. You've got the Elrond Durin relationship, which I mean, we're talking about a future king and essentially a future elf lord, and
Yes.
then you've got Celebrimbor and Narvi, who are not right. I mean, yeah, Celebrimbor is the grandson of
Yeah.
Feanor, but he's not royalty in that sense. He's never going to be the High King of anything, and Narvi is just a guy, but I think seeing their friendship is going to be a very cool element to this season. I hope so. I really hope so.
And they've shown, we saw in person what the actual dwarven rings look like, because they had them on a display with all the
Yeah,
other rings,
yeah,
everything but the one.
hmm
And they released, by the time we got back, they released a photo or part of a behind the scenes video or something, where it's King Durin and Narvi in like the back, and then there's all these other dwarves around the table, and if you count them up, I think there's 7 in total.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
makes me feel like the 7 total dwarf lords have come to Kaza Doom to speak with. Well, one of them will be King Durin, but to
Right.
be around the table and speak with and get their ring potentially.
hmm
I would love to see the rings actually divvied out for the dwarves this season, and then maybe in season 3 we can see how it affects more and more of them.
Yeah, yeah. Quick question: how do you feel about the fact that lore-wise, of course, this doesn't quite fit, right? I mean, we know that the 16 weren't broken down into the 7 and 9
Correct.
until after Sauron got his hands on them, and he decided instead of 8 and 8, well, let's give 9 to the people who are really susceptible. We'll give 7 to those dwarf guys.
Yeah.
Um, but now they're very much made with the dwarves in mind. Are they going to be? I mean, I don't know. Do you have any predictions for that? Any feelings on how that varies from the lore? It's not that big a deal, I suppose.
It's not a huge deal, and I think at this point it's kind of clear that they're kind of going with the poem in order, and the one's going to be the
Yeah,
last one made.
yeah.
So, like, if they're
And that was a
going in
little
order,
disappointing because I would have liked to have seen the 3 made last. I mean, that's important because
correct.
they're not
But
touching
we've
the power
that
on
went
that.
out the window season 1 when they
Yeah,
made them first. So
yeah.
from there,
Very
it's kind of
clearly
like,
that's gone. That ship has
okay.
sailed and not to Valinor. Yeah.
Exactly. Great way to put it. um, but yeah, I mean, I don't really know how much the Anatar influence is going to be. Like,
Yeah.
is it just Celebrimbor deciding he wants to make these extra rings, and as a sign of peace and friendship with the dwarves, we're going to give
Hmm.
you some of these?
Yeah, yeah.
Or, I mean, the dwarven rings do look dwarvish.
Yeah, they do.
Would it have been an elf who makes them in the show? Are they going to let Celebrimbor be the one who makes them? Is
Yeah,
it
I
going
guess
to
we'll find
be,
out.
maybe do they give this part of it to Narvi and allow him to craft or come up with a blueprint for at least, the
Yeah.
part of the ring that goes around your finger and
Hmm.
handpick the gems? I'm not sure. I
I don't
try
know.
not to have too many expectations because I feel like,
Yeah, that's true.
one, you go online, you see a lot of people who are very big into the lore being upset
Yeah.
over the order of things or how the timeline was condensed or whatever, and
Yeah,
like,
it
I
has
get
been
it.
condensed. That's true.
There's also not a ton about the second age that they're allowed to pull from, so I know
No.
that they're gonna have to expand and kinda do different
Hmm.
things or place this thing in here, but they can't call it what we
Yeah.
know it to be because
Yeah,
they might not have the rights for it.
that's
So I
true.
don't really know how they're going to craft or give out the rings. I just know that I'm excited for them to be here, to be given out. They
Yeah.
do look awesome, if not like a ring pop.
They do look a little gaudy, the
Oddly enough,
stone's a
I
bit
went to
big.
I went to the IMDb boat
Uh-huh.
where they were giving these out, and between me and my fiance, we just kinda put our hands in there and took some, and I
Oh,
came
yeah,
back with
yeah.
7. So 1 for
Ha, ha,
all
of
the
course.
dwarves.
Now they
Exactly.
each become the basis for a hoard of gold. We'll have to find out.
Exactly, and I have it sitting in the Durin crown right now,
Of
so
course, as one
it
does.
does look very much like I've been tempted by the rings, and I'm hoarding stuff now for sure.
Well, I will look for your wraith form the next time. Varking, if people want to follow you on social media, what's the best way they can find you?
I mean, the easiest way to get a hold of me is just messaging me through
Oh,
Reddit.
okay.
My username is Barking Rune Song.
Okay.
But if you come to the subreddit, which they'll put on the screen, it is,
Mhm.
reddit.com/r/LOTR underscore on underscore prime.
Mhm.
We made that when the show didn't have a name, folks. Amazon
Right,
doesn't
right.
run it, which is what we get from the haters a lot. They have no say in what I allow or don't allow.
No, no,
They've
that's
actually never
correct.
asked me to do anything with the sub ever, but
Nope.
I get it. I know how it looks when Prime is
Yeah.
in the name of the sub. Or just messaging me on Twitter. I think my username there is also Varking Rune Song. Those are like the two
Okay.
places I'm probably most active with reading messages.
Good.
But I'm also terrible at getting back to people. So don't be
Oh,
offended if
that's
it
fair.
takes me some time to get back to y'all.
No
I
worries. All
would like
right.
to add one more thing if we could.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I often go on other people's videos and I try only
Mhm.
to talk about the dwarves, which is good for me because they're
That's
great
who
in the
you are. It's your
show.
brand. Right.
So I get to compliment the show, I get to
Yeah.
compliment dwarves, and I get to be happy. But one thing that I am very curious how they're going to handle in the show is the Tom Bombadil
Yeah.
wizard.
Yeah.
Kieran Hines playing a wizard. It makes me feel
Mhm.
like it's the Blue Wizards, but Kieran
But
Hines doesn't look like
all
he's
the
wearing
other,
blue in the
yeah.
trailer. The stranger hasn't worn blue yet, so I don't know if this is gonna be
And
like
the
a
Kieran Hines,
Gan
the beard looks very Christopher Lee.
Yes!
Sorry, the stranger has already given some very Gandalfy
Looks
vibes.
like a Gandalf. I do worry a little bit that it's gonna be like Gandalf the Blue and Saruman the Blue, and then they go their own ways. Yeah,
No,
and I see your
no, not
reaction. Yes,
Gandalf the
I know, but I've
Blue.
told people this in private, like, that's my fear
That's a
is,
reasonable fear.
of
Yeah,
I want them to be blues so bad,
yeah.
and I wanna see blue wizards on screen so bad.
I'm Gandalf the Periwinkle.
Yeah, the subreddit is almost to 500,000 members now, but when I
Wow,
joined it, it had less than 1,000, and back then
500,000.
yes,
Okay.
but back then, I put my flair as blue wizard.
Yeah, I
And I
remember.
haven't taken
Yep,
it
yep.
off yet,
No,
even
you
with all the
haven't.
winks and the nods and the follow your noses of season 1. I was
Oh,
like, well, they
I
didn't
know.
officially say he was Gandalf, so I'm
Yep.
holding out
I'm
hope.
still holding out hope too. I'll
I
be honest,
really,
I'm with
really
you.
want him to be a blue.
I don't want him to be Gandalf, and I don't want Kieran Hines to be Saruman. But if I'm a betting man, I'm not betting that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
I don't
exactly.
want to lose my money.
I wanted
Yeah.
to like let you be the first time I've been on somebody else's videos, and I speak about something that's non-dwarves and something
Cool.
I do have a little bit of concern about.
Okay. Well, good. Hopefully, we'll find out. Probably not by the time this episode airs. I think yours is actually the first one in the series of people that I'm talking to. So yours will be out before the show drops. I actually feel bad for some of the folks coming on towards the end because they'll
That'll
be
be
out
after.
a week or two after the show has come out, and their predictions are already going to be,
Yes.
"Oops, oh
They're like, "Oh
well."
yeah, this person's definitely gonna be a Nazgul," and then they're definitely not after the season
Right.
airs. You're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh well.
it is what it
Well,
is."
it is indeed. Varking, thank you again for joining me today. A pleasure to see you at Comic Con and a pleasure to see you today. Obviously, like I said, I hope to see you again before season 3 comes out. But
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Folks, that is it for today's Fandom Friday. But come back next Friday to meet another of your fellow Tolkien fans and maybe learn what niches of the community you might be interested in exploring. And if you're interested in joining me here for a future Fandom Friday, let me know by emailing Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a lot more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times as we wrap up this week with Second Age Saturday. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Follow or subscribe in your podcast apps and follow at Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.